Howdy, and welcome to The Grid. I'm Mike Foreman, a sports writer for the Victoria Advocate, and joining me is Marcus Gutierrez, also a sports writer for the Advocate. And we're going to talk a little bit this afternoon about last week's football games and, of course, this week's football games. We've somewhat returned to normal after Hurricane Harvey, although I understand there are a lot of people that are still dealing with it, and we are too, really. But the football schedule, at least this week, seems to be pretty much back to normal after all the chaos of the last few weeks. And, we can go back to last week. A lot of our teams opened the season last week. I know you were at the West Lockhart game. Lockhart came out on top. What did you see there from the Warriors?
There's a lot of questions with West, with Jordan Fillmore and Chase Greavy out right now. But we got to see a lot of young players play. Brandon Gonzalez. We got to see Keon Boyd. Started at quarterback. He had several flashes at times. He even scored 2 touchdowns. So it was good to see those young players come up. Like you said with Harvey, you could see a little bit with conditioning, and Lockhart looked like it had maybe a little bit of advantage, and the West couldn't stop that slot T, and they just kept on pounding the ball. And when you pound the ball with that kind of offense, the clock goes down, and you're limited what you can do on offense. But we won't know what West is until they get their 2 starters back, who did a tremendous job last year. But they're going to need some game time play to get back into condition, and they have a tough test this week when they go up, make the trip to Alamo Heights.
Right, of course. The Mules, they've gotten off to an 0-2 start, but to be fair, both those teams were 6A teams. So Alamo Heights is one of those consistently good programs.
Yeah, last year they came to West. They put a hurting on the Warriors, 38-16. It was a passing offense, quick little outs and down the field. So West will have to adjust from that slot T and go into an air raid this year. But they have familiarity. I know that Boyce and the coaching staff, they're looking at film, trying to get an edge at whatever they can. So they'll be prepared this week to go on the road.
Right, and I know, of course, our colleague Ray Castillo covered East in its season opener against Flower Bluff. Flower Bluff coming out on top. I think the biggest thing there is East is still kind of trying to find itself, what works, what doesn't. Obviously, they're going to rely heavily on Brandon Tomlinson, who had 200 yards rushing. I mean, that's going to be something they're going to lean on heavily, but I think they have to find some other solutions too, because teams are aware of that. They're going to know, like this week, that their opponents are going to know that Tomlinson is going to get the ball quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So when East Central comes to Memorial Stadium, I think East is, I'm sure, they're going to get the ball to Tomlinson, but they also probably need to find something else.
And that's what non-district play is for us. You can figure out your team, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how you can put that all together when district starts. They came up short against Flower Bluff, but I'm pretty sure Coach Gonzalez and them is getting those guys ready, and they lost a lot of pieces, and now we're going to see these young players really develop, and so we could see stars every week from Victoria East coming up big, and we're going to get to know those new names.
Right, and one bright point for the area anyways last week was the Calhoun Sand Crabs. Mm-hmm. They go up to Stafford and come back with a 19-7 win, which was Richard Whitaker's 100th win at Calhoun. He's in his 13th season. It's an incredible turnaround if you're not aware. They hadn't even won 30 games in the previous 13 years. Not to mention, hadn't been to the playoffs since the 60s. Mm-hmm. But the bright thing for Calhoun, I think, Coach Whitaker was saying, is they only fumbled once. Mm-hmm. And anybody that followed them last year knows that was a huge issue. Mm-hmm. In fact, probably cost them a lot of losses. But that's a good thing for Calhoun. Also, the defense played very well, which is another bright spot for the Sand Crabs.
Yeah, I talked to Ross down at the Port Lavaca Wave. He said their defense was tremendous, and like you mentioned, that one fumble. And going against a great athletic Stafford team who always has great athletes every year that sends players to Division I football programs, and for them to get a win like that, that does big for a young team like that. Not playing a lot of seniors, these kids are sophomores and juniors that are getting a start, and that's a very eye opening. And now they'll get another chance to play this week.
Right. I think one of the biggest surprises for me last week was some of the teams that were playing their first game were actually a lot sharper than I thought they would be. I mean, of course, you worry about conditioning because, there's no way to duplicate a game condition in a scrimmage or a practice. But I'm thinking of two examples. One is Cuero, the other is Refugio and Goliad, who were both playing their first game. Refugio Goliad 35-28. Both teams, they executed pretty well. Neither team ran the ball very well, but you've got to credit the defense as much as the lack of offense there. But I would have to think, and I know I spoke to both coaches, both Bobby Nicholson at Goliad and Jason Herring at Refugio, and they were both very encouraged by what they saw from that game. So, that was kind of a surprise. And also, the way the Cuero Gobblers played against Yoakum, which is a very talented team that had already played a game, that was really kind of surprising. I know, obviously, since it was Yoakum, the big DeWitt County rivalry, you're obviously going to be fired up and, want to do well. But still, emotion can only carry you so far. And, of course, they had just a great performance from Jordan Whittington, who, as a result, was named the Ford Tough Player of the Week in Class 4A. But, I guess Coach Travis Reeve had to be really pleased for an opening night after, really, they missed their last scrimmage. They didn't play their first game, so it had been a while since they'd really gone against another opponent.
And that was the game of the week last week. It got a lot of state attention. It was close at the beginning. I think it was tied at 13-1, and then Cuero just took over with Whittington. What was that game like? How were the stands? How was everything?
The atmosphere was just electric. I mean, I said this to Coach Reeve after the game. I think that is the biggest crowd I have ever seen in Gobbler Stadium. I've seen Cuero, I know, in playoffs has played before bigger crowds. But just actually right there at Gobbler Stadium, at least all the time that I've been there, that place was jammed. I mean, it was hard finding a parking space before the game. I mean, it was a great atmosphere, and really there was so much build-up and anticipation for that game. And as you said, it was 20-13 Cuero at half. And then Cuero took the kickoff in the third quarter, marched down and scored. And when Yoakum didn't respond, you could kind of sense the air going out of Yoakum a little bit. And then, of course, Whittington most of he had 4 touchdown runs. I mean, all of them were from the shotgun, in the Wildcat. And he just put moves on people that you don't see every day. I mean, those were big time moves. Even Yoakum coach Bo Robinson said after the game, he commented on that. So that's very encouraging for Cuero.
I think it's also encouraging for Yoakum. I know that Bo always likes to see how his team goes against Cuero. Cuero's ranked number 6 in the poll, and when you compete against a team like that and you see where you are as a team, you'll be able to build on that. I know that last year, that Cuero game, he learned a lot about his team. Talked with him this week. It seems like they know where they're at and they know where they need to improve. So it's a loss, but I'm sure Bo will get the Bulldogs back on it and they'll be ready to go.
Well, he said something very interesting to me after the game. It's very true. He said, I've never been bothered by a loss unless it's the last game of the season.
Yeah.
Which means, what he's saying is, we're playing again next week. We have a chance to learn from this, to get better from this, and hopefully down the road it will pay off. So I think that's what Yoakum needs to take away from this is that, we're good, but we got a lot of work to do. We have some things to correct, and if we can get them corrected, they have a chance to be right back where they were last year, I think, after seeing them. I mean, they're very talented. And let's move on to this week. We've actually got a pretty full schedule this week. I know Refugio has its bye week, and that was already scheduled though. So let's start off with the home game, and that's Victoria East and East Central. I guess this is a chance for the Titans hopefully to bounce back. I mean, East Central is 0-2, so it has struggled as well.
Like you said, both teams are looking for a win. I'm pretty sure Roland and the Titans ready to go. Maybe see a little bit more from Grant Baker. Ray told us that he looked comfortable in the pocket, but being down so much, to rely on a young man to do everything is not the right way. So I'm pretty sure Roland is going to have everything planned out for these guys. Tumlin's going to be a key if he can. They're game planning, but he's talented enough to break runs and have that kind of impact. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I'm curious about the defense. I mean, I don't know, 35 points against Flower Bluff. It's hard to judge, So we'll see a lot about them this week. We'll find out a lot about the defense. And then for West, what are they going to have to do to be competitive against Alamo Heights?
We talked about it a little earlier, that passing game. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of young athletes back there. Bryce Sitka, Brandon Gonzalez, a lot of young players. They're going to be tested this week, so I'm pretty sure that Boyce and that coaching staff, they're going to have a game plan set for them. They're going to have to get pressure on the quarterback. With that slot T, they weren't in the backfield a lot, trying to get that stop on the first down. So I think they're going to need to get some pressure on first and second down to get them back a little bit. So it's going to force Alamo Heights to do things they haven't done. Last year against Alamo Heights, they were with them a little bit, but then Alamo Heights turned it on. So it's going to be interesting to see. They played each other, they know each other. Now West is going to take that 2-hour trip down to San Antonio, and we're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and another very interesting matchup is Calhoun goes up 59 to play the El Campo Rice Birds. They used to be district opponents way back. In fact, in the last time was Richard Whitaker's first year in 2005. That's the last time Calhoun has been to El Campo Rice Bird Stadium. Let's face it, back in the day when they were in the same district, Calhoun wasn't very good, and El Campo pretty much regularly handled them. But I really feel like that the Sand Crabs feel they have a legitimate chance this year, and this will be a good gauge for both teams. Of course, excuse me, Calhoun is going to present a problem for anyone because of its offense. It's hard to prepare for that in a week. But I'm curious, because El Campo's coming off a 31-0 loss to Angleton, which we all know, is a great team. But I really like to see how much the Ricebirds improve in this week.
Yeah, the Ricebirds, they lost Brock Bandel, but they still have Enriquez back at the running back position, so you can look for them to run the ball a lot this year. He was one of our leaders there last year. They made a big playoff run. I'm pretty sure Coach Condra and them, they're going to give him the ball and look to keep that clock going, because that game might be over real fast if they're running the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see. We all get to learn about these teams in the non-district schedule. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And speaking of a possible fast game, Edna East Bernard. I mean, here you go. You've got two teams run the slot T. Coach Jerry Long, who's in his first year at Edna, coached at East Bernard until last year when he went to Corpus Christi Carroll for 1 year. His assistant, Wade Bossy, is now the head coach at East Bernard. So this is kind of interesting. Both teams will have the same approach. Obviously, East Bernard has been running the slot T for years, so their execution, whereas Edna just has one game under its belt. Although they did defeat Ingleside, and Kenny Haynes had over 100 yards in that game. But it's curious. I'll be curious to see how Edna has come along, and this would be a good gauge for them, kind of to see how they progressed in their offense.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough task for Edna, because once district starts, they're going to have to go against Yoakum, Halsville. It's going to be a very tight district, so you're going to want to know what your team is before you start playing those games that matter.
Right. And speaking of Hallettsville handled Shiner pretty well. And now they play Bowling, which is playing its first game. It had to miss its first two games, but let's not forget Bowling was a state finalist last year. They did lose some people, but they're still they still have a quarterback back. So this would be a good test for Hallettsville.
Yeah, Vernon Jackson's quarterback.
Yeah.
He's one of the highly touted players in the state of Texas. They have a new coach. Like you said, they lost a lot of seniors a part of that
Right.
team. But Vernon Jackson, he's a special player, and I'm pretty sure down there in Hallettsville, they're going to try to set up something to stop him.
And then we did have one game added actually
Mhm.
this week. St. Joseph, which lost its season opener down in Kingsville to Santa Gertrudis Academy, because they lost the Bloomington game. They added a game with a Tomball Christian, which will be Saturday at 2 p.m. at Memorial Stadium, not Patty Weller where they usually play. Don't know much about Tomball Christian. It is the defending state T-Cal champion, but we really don't know what that means. But I think Coach Hall's thought here was we need to play, and he didn't want to have a week off after just playing one game.
Yeah, he said a lot of trouble on the field was conditioning. There were a lot of players cramping up, and you expect that with the Hurricane Harvey giving them almost a week and a half off. But he said at times there were sparks where they looked good. The offense was clicking with Jacob Wardowski, the sophomore quarterback. He said that this non-district schedule is getting all back into shape, getting things into the groove, getting in the groove of things. So I'll be out there Saturday. I'm curious to see how the Flyers look. Coach Hall is a great coach. He always has them going. But we'll be able to see more. Cramps can be a problem. You have a cramp, you got to throw a kid in there who doesn't know what to do, and things can happen. Also, there are like a lot of miscues, false starts, offsides, the little things that can add up to yards for them. But Coach Hall says they're getting better with each practice and each day, and so we'll see what they can do against Tomball Christian.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And like we said, if you all have questions or anything, just feel free to send them our way, and we'll do our best to answer them. And we've got a full week this week, and we'll be out at a number of games, and you can read about it in the Grid in Sunday's paper. And like we said, if you have questions, please feel free. And we'll be back next week, and we look forward to seeing you then.